Good day, and welcome to the League of Women Voters Meet the Candidates Forum, a program produced in collaboration with WTJX-TV for well over 35 years. It is our hope that through these programs, you, the voting public, will have a better understanding of each candidate running for elective office in the U.S. Virgin Islands. We invite you to look at all our programs for the 2022 election year right here on WTJX-TV with candidates seeking office as a senator in the 35th legislature or as lieutenant governor or as governor. I am Francine Lang, a member of the board of directors of the League of Women Voters and leader of the St. Croix unit of the League. I'm delighted to have as co-moderator Mr. John Abramson, former supervisor of the election system and a member of the League of Women Voters of the Virgin Islands.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here and looking forward to an informative and engaging discussion with the three candidates for the position of Lieutenant Governor. Thank you, candidates, for being here. Today's program is a 90-minute session with three candidates for the position of Lieutenant Governor. Here's the guidelines. The candidates have been informed in advance of these guidelines for the program. The first responder of each question will be rotated among the participants. The answers are generally 60 seconds to 2 minutes. Changes in the time allowed for each question will be announced. No candidate had access to the questions in advance. Any comment directly, specifically to another participant will be allowed a rebuttal of 60 seconds. A rebuttal is allowed only to challenge or refute a statement made to a candidate or his team, not to add new or additional information. All are expected to be respectful to everyone.
So let's begin. I will ask each candidate to simply identify who they are and to state their political affiliation and ballot number. We will learn more about each candidate as our discussion ensues. While all four candidates for the lieutenant governor position were invited, one did not respond to our invitation. We are happy to have three of them here with us today. Candidates, please introduce yourselves. Let's start with Mr. Roach. Please state your name, ballot number, and political affiliation, please.
Greetings. I am Tregenza Roach, the gubernatorial candidate on the Brian Roach team. Number 1 on your ballot. We are the Democratic candidates. Thank you.
Mr. Miller.
Greetings. I am Gregory E. Miller, Jr. On the ICM ticket, number 3 on the ballot.
And Ms. Sarauw.
Warm hellos. My name is Janelle K, your Lieutenant Governor candidate for the VLA Sarauw ticket, number 4 on the ballot, and we're independent candidates.
Thank you. Now for our first question. And this question has 2 parts. You'll be allowed 2 minutes to answer the question. Part A, what is your understanding of the scope of the responsibilities of this position? And Part B, what are your education or accomplishments that demonstrate you are well suited to handle these responsibilities? Again, you have 2 minutes. We'll start with Mr. Roach.
Thank you. The office of Lieutenant Governor is the second highest generator of revenue for the government of the Virgin Islands. It follows only the Bureau of Internal Revenue. It has several divisions, which include the Record of Deeds, the Cadastral Division, the Tax Assessor, the Tax Collector, the Banking and Insurance Division. We also manage the passport offices, and we are responsible for educating seniors as to the Medicare provisions that affect them and other seniors in this country. I am an attorney at law. I have worked in private practice, corporations division, which is also under Lieutenant Governor's office. From the time I was probably 30 years old, I was doing title searches at the office of the Lieutenant Governor and frequently dealing with documents that incorporated corporations there. I represented clients with issues that had to be addressed at the office of the Lieutenant Governor. I became the Lieutenant Governor in 2019, and I believe that I have managed these offices effectively. We contributed $116 million to the general fund this past fiscal year. We were able to go to the National Association of Insurance Commissioners because the Lieutenant Governor serves as the Commissioner of Banking and Insurance and the Chairman of the Banking Board, and we were able to accomplish accreditation of our Banking and Insurance Division, which says to insurance companies that our policies and our personnel are on par with every jurisdiction in this country. And in fact, we are the only territory of the United States that is fully accredited at this time, and we accomplished that in this term. We also accomplished several amnesties, which I initiated myself because I believe them to be in the interest of the people of the territory.
Thank you. And we will now have Mr. Miller. Did you need me to reread the question?
Please.
Okay. What is your understanding of the scope of the responsibilities of this position? And part B, what are your education or accomplishments that demonstrate you are well suited to handle these responsibilities? Again, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, my name is Greg Miller Jr. again. In my opinion, the responsibility of the Lieutenant Governor, the office of Lieutenant Governor, is to help generate new revenue generating measures in the Virgin Islands for the Virgin Islands people. And so I understand that there's a good bit of agencies. The Lieutenant Governor failed to mention the Notary Public and the GIS program also that's in, and the VI SHIP program for Medicare. Also, but the banking and insurance division is also one of the leading generating revenue makers for the Lieutenant Governor office. And with my background, I graduated from the University of Maryland Institute of Technology in Electrical and Engineering. I have an electrical and engineering degree, and I understand that I've been involved in the restoration of the Virgin, especially St. Croix, when it as it relates to the Water and Power Authority, and I also assisted in. I was the lead inspector for the roofing program for St. Croix. We inspected 4,000 homes in 2 months, and we were trying to help the people of the Virgin Islands get their homes rebuilt. And we understand that there's issues with that program right now, and I'd like to see it repaired. All the roofs in the Virgin Islands repaired. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. And Ms. Sarauw, did you need me to reread the question?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Again, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. The role of Lieutenant Governor is actually found in Title III of the Virgin Islands Code, and I don't want to sound redundant, but like the two candidates before me, the Lieutenant Governor is second highest generator. Our property taxes have been used as collateral for bonds that we've passed. So the divisions are very important. We're talking about property tax, the tax assessor, cadastral, corporations and trademarks, GIS, banking and insurance. The Lieutenant Governor is actually the regulator of the banking and insurance industry as well. So there are so many critical components to our economy that falls under the office of Lieutenant Governor. While in the Senate under the Committee of Finance, we've had the opportunity to work with the former Director of Banking and Insurance to pass over maybe 6 to 8 legislations that deal with banking and insurance specifically. Recently with the new accreditation that has been achieved by Lieutenant Governor's office, the legislation had to come to the Senate, so I am quite familiar with that legislation. We had to vote on it in the Committee of Finance, and it moved to the full body. I have a degree in political science. I have a master's degree in organizational leadership with a focus on political institutions, and I'm currently a doctoral student writing about colonialism in the Virgin Islands. I came home. I was a teacher of U.S. history and comparative politics. I taught at UVI. I am a culture bearer, a coach. More importantly, I worked in the Lieutenant Governor's office as the special assistant to the former Lieutenant Governor. So I've seen firsthand from both sides, from the Office of Lieutenant Governor, as well as from the Senate side, the important role of the Office of Lieutenant Governor and the integral role it plays in our economy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rebuttal.
Yes,
Rebuttal.
go right ahead.
Just for clarification purposes, Mr. Miller indicated that I did not name the VI SHIP and the notary divisions. The VI SHIP division I may not have mentioned by name, but for clarity, that is the entity under the Lieutenant Governor's office that I mentioned with regard to the Medicare beneficiaries and that direct and help our seniors in making decisions about their health care.
Thank you.
All right, question number 2. Given the responsibility of the office, your administrative style is critical to the success of the office. What challenges have you successfully managed in your professional career that would demonstrate your administrative style? You have 90 seconds.
Me? I go first?
You go first. Yeah, Mr. Brother Candidate.
Okay, good. I've been working in the engineering department for the Water and Power Authority. I've designed and created a mapping system for the entire Virgin Islands. I've been in charge of that program. I've also been, like I said, the lead inspector for the roofing, Envision Roofing Tomorrow. I work with Caribbean professional consultants as the lead inspector. I also worked with the Water and Power Authority as the lead engineer with my team. We worked on Feeder 4. We repaired it. We were the first ones to complete that mission. We worked without the assistance of the team that came in from the States. And my skills, my leadership skills, my record reflects my leadership skills. And I hope I answered the question, because that's all that the Lieutenant Governor office, the Lieutenant Governor is second in command. And in the event that the governor unfortunately gets sick, you're supposed to be able to take that lead. And I've always been in the lead when it comes to projects in the Virgin Islands or anywhere I work. Thank you.
Candidate
I thought you
Sarauw?
had to acknowledge me before.
Candidate Sarauw.
Okay. Thank you. I am probably the most transparent candidate senator that there is. It's evident as I'm always torn to shreds. But I also have, there's a concept of intersectionality, and there's so many, besides sexual orientation, being a woman, being black, being an athlete, there's so many different crossroads. I have a mom from St. Kitts, my dad is from Frederickside, St. Croix. So I am really a Virgin Islander and someone from the Caribbean. And just intersecting through those various parts of my life has allowed me to see the other side of the coin. And because of that, I'm able to build consensus. The Senate is also has also contributed to my leadership style. There's nothing more difficult than to walk in a room as the only, at one point in time, well, twice, I was the only independent in an all-Democratic majority, having to chair the most powerful committee at one point, the Committee on Rules and Judiciary, building consensus, arguing, going back and readjusting legislation to get them to vote for legislations that I authored. So those are the contributing factors that helped me in leadership. Also, I believe in the will to power and the will to lead, and empowering those that are working with you. I have an open door policy, and that's it.
Candidate Roach?
Thank you. Well, my working career has pretty much been split between the public and private sectors. And as early as the age of 23, I was a part of the management team of the Daily News of the Virgin Islands, the youngest news editor ever named at the paper, and helping to effectively manage the newsroom of that news organization. So I think managerial experience, which began very early in my career, by the time I was 33, I was also at the law firm of Bourne, Handy and Rashid, thinking about billable hours and how billable hours support the operation of the law firm. My management work from there went to executive director of the Board of Education, Department of Education, where I served as legal counsel, always having to manage people and manage budgets and preparing budgets and administering them. I believe in my people. If you ever hear me on the radio talking about my staff, I'm always talking about the benefits of the wonderful people who work in these organizations and who produce quality work. And if you notice as well, from the time I became Lieutenant Governor, I have steadily been empowering my staff by promoting people within the organization. My Chief of Staff was promoted from in the organization. The Banking and Insurance Division Director was promoted from within the organization. I believe in making professional opportunities available, just as I have had throughout the course of my life.
Okay, our next question, we will start with Senator Sarauw. Years ago, former Senator Berry, now deceased, pursued the idea of separating the Division of Banking, Insurance, and Financial Regulations from the Lieutenant Governor's office and establishing it as a separate department reporting directly to the Governor. What do you think of this idea? Please justify your response, and you have 60 seconds.
I don't necessarily agree with putting that those divisions under the office of the governor. I think that the Lieutenant Governor is doing a pretty okay job with that division. What I will propose is that the Lieutenant Governor maintains oversight over insurance, but he or she does not remain as the Commissioner of Insurance. I think that the Commissioner of Insurance should be someone who has a strong insurance background, an insurance guru, with staff that can really focus on matters of insurance. As we can see, there's an issue with property insurance and health insurance. We have too many that are uncompensated. And our Blue Roof program also shows that we had so many people that were underinsured or not insured. So I really think a lot of focus has to be on establishing or separating the Commissioner of Insurance role from being the Lieutenant Governor, and separate it and have someone to really focus and hone in on the insurance matters of this territory. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Lieutenant Governor Roach. Did you need me to reread the question?
No, I think
Okay.
I remember.
Again, you have 60 seconds.
Thank you for the question. I think it's a question that really requires a lot of thought. The provisions that make the Lieutenant Governor the Commissioner of Banking and Insurance and the Chairman of the Banking Board really are the only provisions that give the Lieutenant Governor some kind of autonomy in this circumstance. The Governor, when the Governor goes out and makes deals or negotiates with the bank, the Lieutenant Governor is not included in those instances, and he's not included in those instances because he regulates. So the idea of making the regulator accountable to the Governor, who is the one who should negotiate agreements with the bank, I think it's problematic, and I would not support it without a lot of other thought about the potential conflicts that may arise.
Thank you. And Mr. Miller.
So can you repeat the question?
Sure. Years ago, former Senator Berry, now deceased, pursued the idea of separating the Division of Banking, Insurance, and Financial Regulations from the Lieutenant Governor's office and establishing it as a separate department reporting directly to the Governor. What do you think of this idea? And please justify your response. You have 60 seconds.
Well, what is evident is that the Lieutenant Governor should be the regulatory, the Lieutenant Governor office should be the regulatory entity as it relates to banking and insurance. And I think that he should be the one who, naturally addresses the banking insurance agencies and policies and regulatory and regulations. The Governor should be the one who addresses creating, the relationship between the banks, and the Lieutenant Governor should be the one who regulates. So,
Thank you.
I hope I answered the question.
Yes. Okay, our next question will start with Lieutenant Governor Roach. Many in the public do not quite understand the role of the Lieutenant Governor's office as a powerful revenue-generating entity. Can you explain the revenue-generating role of this office to the public? You have 60 seconds.
Thank you. The Lieutenant Governor's office generates revenues in a number of ways. For instance, when we had Oriental Bank come into the territory, that's a huge instance of a banking fee. The licensure for that bank is like $150,000 annually. The franchise taxes are collected at the office of the Lieutenant Governor, and most importantly, the property taxes, which provide a significant source of revenue. We assess property, we collect taxes related to property, and one of the roles that the Lieutenant Governor plays as well is as the Secretary of State. Literally, apostilles come to my office every single day, and I call myself really a human cash register, because every single time my name is affixed to a document, it means revenue for the government of the Virgin Islands. And as I indicated before, we are constantly thinking in the legislature. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
And Mr. Miller, you will have this question next. Did you need me to reread this question?
No.
Okay, you have
So-
60 seconds.
Can I go now?
Yes.
Okay, so the Lieutenant Governor's office should be a revenue-generating entity, but I find that there's more need for more revenue-generating initiatives in the Lieutenant Governor office. I understand that, you know, we're responsible for creating new revenue-generating measures, and I find that under these past administrations, we've just been accepting what the Lieutenant Governor office has been doing so far, which is a great job. However, we need to infuse more revenue-generating measures into the Virgin Islands so we can bring more new, fresh money into the coffers of the Virgin Islands so we can take care of all our people in the Virgin Islands. Thank you.
All right, Senator Sarauw,
Thank you. I stated before.
again, 60 seconds.
I stated before, the Office of Lieutenant Governor is a major revenue generating source. I think last year we collected $54 million in property taxes. They say we projected roughly $58 million the last time that they came before us. I think the Lieutenant Governor's office was a bit low, and I think they were at some 49, 50. I don't know if it changed since then. But the Lieutenant Governor also collects, as Lieutenant Governor said, franchise fees, notary apostilles, banking fees as well. And the role of the tax assessor is also important. We have to look at how we assess property. We have so many villas that are being used in a commercial sense. And I think that if we go back and reassess those areas that are being used as a commercial property, I think we'll see a slight uptick in the amount of taxes that we do collect, which would add more money to the coffers of the territory. Thank you.
Candidate Miller,
Sir.
since the office of Lieutenant Governor is the second biggest revenue generator in the area, in the executive branch, what have you done or will do to assure increasing the accountability and transparency within all the divisions? You have 90 seconds.
Well, you know, the accountability and transparency, as we know, is we've been lacking a lot of accountability and transparency in the past government administrations. And so I would definitely increase more public awareness by holding town hall meetings, going out to addressing our financial status as relates to the assets that we have, and letting the people know exactly what's going on. Also, I have a lot of revenue generation ideas, measures in my head that I could put forward to introduce again to the Lieutenant Governor office. I keep saying we need to produce more revenue generating measures and stop taxing the people, putting all the onus of taxes on the people to pay for all these bills that we have in the Virgin Islands. So by creating new revenue generating measures, we could eliminate or alleviate all the strain that's being posed on our Virgin Islands people, property taxes, income tax, gross receipt tax. We need to create more revenue generating measures to come up with ideas. Thank you.
Senate candidate Sarauw.
Please repeat the question if you can.
The question again. Since the office of the Lieutenant Governor is the second biggest generating revenue in the area in the executive, what have you done or will do to assure increased accountability and transparency within all divisions? And you have 90 seconds.
While serving in the Senate, I actually remained the only member of the Senate to publish a report. And that report included every single dollar that I spent. If I spent $10 on a hamburger, the public knew that I bought a hamburger for $10. And I'm also known in the Senate for my high level of accountability. There is not an agency head that swings by that I do not hold accountable. So I've shown that in the Senate, of course, with the fiduciary responsibility that we do have. But while working in the Office of Lieutenant Governor, we worked on fixing the illegal property actions. We worked on moving the GIS system forward. The street naming initiative just began at that time while I was there. We worked hard to digitize the Office of Corporations and Trademarks and also within the Property Tax Office because there were so many deeds that were on paper and we needed to move them over to the digital side. So I worked there at the time when we began that process. But I think that we'll continue to, as Lieutenant Governor, push for real-time data, push for real-time information. I think that's what we're lacking in the territory, real-time information, and also more dialogue with the community. We need more town halls, more educational campaigns, because people really don't understand the role of Lieutenant Governor and the impact that it does have, health, insurance, corporations, trademarks. A lot of people come to Lieutenant Governor's office for help, so that's what we'll do. Thank you.
Okay, Senator Sarauw, right back to you. Given the... Oh, sorry. Oh, my bad.
Okay. I believe that the Office of the Lieutenant Governor is very transparent. In fact, we recently published an extensive listing of our delinquencies. We had to admit the taxes that we haven't collected, but those have gone back to 1979. We report all revenues collected regularly to the legislature. We are regularly before the legislature, accounting for every dollar that we collect, and being grilled by the senators, including my opponent, about the revenues that we generated and ways in which we can accomplish even greater collections. We do have a standing radio program where we inform residents about these collections, about the various units under the Office of the Lieutenant Governor. We intend to do more of that. And I think what I would like to see more of, but a function of the office as well, is we are an advocate for the community. So we have an entire complaint section where if you have an issue with the bank, if you feel you have been discriminated against, if you have an issue with your insurance company, we can appoint hearing officers to hear your complaints, and we regularly direct orders at banks and insurance companies to address our findings when we complete the hearings and complaint processes.
Now, Senator Sarauw, given the revenue-generating ability of the office, what opportunities do you see ahead that could make it even more productive? You have 2 minutes.
I will look at the assessor's office and how the assessor is assessing property. There are a lot of property across the territory. They're paying the rate of a damaged home. They fixed their homes, and there has not been a reassessment done. I think that we need to arm, I know that we need to arm the tax assessor's office, probably with more tools, cars, people. We also have to raise the salary of those who work within the Lieutenant Governor's office. The job that they do is very technical. So we're talking about surveyors, those who appraise, the assessor, and the salaries coming from the Committee on Finance, the salaries are entirely too low. So in order for us to generate revenue, we also have to amp up the staff that we do have. There are way too many vacancies as well that I noticed within the Lieutenant Governor's office. I also propose changing, in the essence of time, changing the fee structure for property taxes. We get one property tax bill a year, and sometimes people cannot afford to pay their property tax bill. I know amnesties have been, the President Lieutenant Governor, my opponent, has issued amnesties, but I think that we also need to change the way we bill. If we can look at property tax bills monthly, we can look at them quarterly, but we have to create ways to make it easier on the property owner to pay their taxes. In addition, we also have to look at St. John, where there's so many commercial properties that are going under the radar that are not paying their fair share of taxes, and they can't afford to pay them. So I definitely will hone in on the commercial properties that are under the radar. They're not listed anywhere, but they're acting as commercial properties, and get them in line so that we can generate revenue for the territory. Thank you.
Lieutenant Governor Roach.
Thank you for the question. I think one of the essential items, I do agree with my opponent, that we do need additional staffing in the office of the Lieutenant Governor, and we've been acting on that in terms of recruiting people. There is a challenge with human capital and with getting qualified people for these positions. I would just like to add that we are in the process of making assessments. There was a dip in the collection of property taxes, but part of that reflects the assessment of properties after a storm, because we actually went out and reassessed properties so that people were not paying the same rate for their properties when they were totally livable versus the damages that occurred to them. And we're at that point now of reassessing properties to make sure that our values actually match what we should be collecting from those entities. There is a possibility for additional revenue to be collected in the division. The statutes also call for us to be also a publication unit, and we are working on that, where we publish rules and regulations for all of the government agencies. We are the entity that promulgates those rules and regulations, and to make them available to legal libraries, to legal research companies, to anyone who essentially wants them. And I think that's an additional method of generating revenues for the entity as well.
Candidate Miller.
Okay, so it appears to me that my two opponents feel that the only way that we can generate revenues for the Virgin Islands is to tax the people, is to continually put taxes on the people's head to pay the bills for the government. We must come up with new revenue generating measures outside taxation, okay, so that we could help alleviate again the strain or the pressures of property tax owners who can't pay their bill. Again, I agree, if they can't pay their bill, there should be an amnesty or an extension for us to work with our people. The Fred Miller team, we're ready, we're prepared. We have designed initiatives, created initiatives to look outside of the box, if you will, to create new revenue generating measures to assist the people in home ownership, in what is proper insurance for all, without leaving out anyone, to build new schools, to create for monies to build new hospitals. Currently, the monies that we're collecting from the taxes aren't enough, and so to help the people of the Virgin Islands. So we must come up again. I can't emphasize enough. We have to think outside the box and stop relying on taxation of properties and from the people of the Virgin Islands to bring new revenues into the Virgin Islands. We're surrounded by water. Water is the #1 commodity on the market right now that's making money. We have the wherewithal to produce. That's just one entity. We have the wherewithal to produce at least 5 to 6 million gallons of water a day. The world is begging for potable water. We have the ability to do this. Why aren't we just one entity to tap into?
Rebuttal as well, please.
Of course.
Senator
I can
Sarauw.
report too?
Senator Sarauw. No.
Oh.
Thank you. After the Lieutenant Governor's hearing, the office, when they came down before the Committee on Finance, we realized that there was a major backlog in the Recorder of Deeds office, and there were so many vacancies in critical positions that hampered the function of the office. So what we did was, in this year's budget, we funded through UVI Cell. I called Dr. Hall, I got the information, and we funded an appraisal program and a surveyor program through UVI Cell so that we can build capacity in those areas that were lacking within the Lieutenant Governor's office as we continue to rebuild this territory post-disaster and post-storms. So thank you.
Lieutenant Governor Roach.
Thank you. My opponent references revenue-generating measures that we have failed to mention, but I don't think he's mentioned one as yet, except saying that we need revenue-generating measures pertaining to the office of the Lieutenant Governor. The office of the Lieutenant Governor, there's tremendous wealth in this territory. One of the offices is as well the Recorder of Deeds. And every real estate transaction requires that monies be collected that eventually go to support public services as well as public education in the territory. We must deal with the offices as they are structured. If laws are passed that says that the tax collection functions must be changed, but we will adhere to law. But by law, the Lieutenant Governor is required to collect franchise taxes, corporate taxes, fees that deal with incorporation of public companies in the territory. That is our role, and that is what we do as a major function.
Thank you. Our next question, we will start with Lieutenant Governor Roach. We are said to be a resilient people, meaning that we can bounce back to normal after a destabilizing blow to the system. How would you, as Lieutenant Governor, contribute to that resiliency? And you have 2 minutes.
Well, I do think Virgin Islanders are a resilient people, but I think we have been really challenged. That resiliency has been challenged so many times within the last 5 years. First, by the devastating hurricanes that we experienced, the pandemic, rising costs of living. I think we need to support our population, and in so many instances, I believe that this administration that I'm a part of has done that. We have released to the public payments that go back from 1995 and beyond. When I worked at the Department of Education, we were talking about ways to pay people their retroactive pay. And now we're finally moving in that regard. My opponent, candidate for governor, said the other day, Mr. VLA, that money is not quality of life. Well, poverty reflects a quality of life that we also do not want for our population. And I believe that we have to look at the well-being of our population through putting money in their pockets, which they can use in whichever ways they can to enhance the quality of life. And I believe we also need to take measures that help the resiliency of people, kinds of measures we've taken to initiate wellness in our community, the programs that we have operating through the Office of the Governor, through the human resources component of our government, the behavioral modifications that we're trying to put into our community to improve health and wellness. I think all of those things go towards resiliency. And I think we have to make sure that we are not commending our people about resiliency without looking at the problems that do plague them. In our offices, we are regularly trying to promote employee health and wellness as well.
Thank you. And Mr. Miller, did you need me to reread the question?
No.
Okay.
So
2 minutes.
Thank you for the question. So I think that my opponent, Lieutenant Governor Roach, he needs to stop pump faking and shoot the ball. You know, we have known that the government is bankrupt for ideas. And I've mentioned one of the initiatives to create new revenue generating measures into the coffers of the Virgin Islands, and that's the water bottling initiative. We have a comprehensive land and water use plan that is law, and we fail to utilize these programs to help generate new revenues into the Virgin Islands. We have an agricultural program that we're not utilizing adequately so that we could bring new revenues into the Virgin Islands. We have a whole lot of fruits and vegetables that's rotting in the Virgin Islands, and we're not taking care of it. We have animals. I mean, we had the Centerpole cows that we could have made a whole lot of money off of right now, but we sold it. So we have a tendency to giving away things that we have created here in the Virgin Islands that's helping the people of the Virgin Islands to grow and to be comfortable. So I'm saying to you, we need to be more creative as a people and introduce new revenue generating measures so that we can help alleviate the strains and the frustration of the people of the Virgin Islands, because these previous administrations has lacked that drive to do so for the people. We have a constant, it puts us in a posture of begging, if you will, to the federal government for monies when we could create our own money. The water bottle initiative is $1 trillion industry.
Thank you, Senator Sarauw. Did you need me to reread the question?
Please.
Okay. We are said to be a resilient people, meaning that we can bounce back to normal after a destabilizing blow to the system. How would you, as Lieutenant Governor, contribute to that resiliency? And you have 2 minutes.
What this territory has gone through has indeed impacted the mental health of the people of our territory. Outside of seeking professional help and attending counseling, I think we also need to look at education. In education, we have consolidated grant awards that specifically focus on social emotional learning. We have to move those federal dollars to bring back or to enhance our fine arts programs, our music programs, our vocab programs. That's one outlet. We need outlets. If we're talking about resiliency, people need outlets and ways to transfer that energy. Secondly, healthcare. We got to focus on healthcare. People are frustrated with the state of our healthcare system. So one, we got to look at the J1 visa program. We had so many great doctors that came to this territory from the J1 visa program. We got to look at the loan repayment program to incentivize doctors to come here. And we have to actually finalize the nursing contract so our nurses can feel that they're valued within the territory. And lastly, outlets. The governor got up and went to Leah Boston's championship game. And Leah didn't sit for 2 years during the pandemic and not train, or she would not have been a top player in the United States. I'm a former Division I athlete. During the pandemic, we closed almost every single park. Our athletes had no outlet. We're not saying that athletes had to train and endanger themselves in the middle of a pandemic, but there could have been creative ways where we allow them to train. Johnny comes in from 9 to 10, sanitize the balls. Somebody comes in from 10 to 11, work on their shooting. Find ways for them to train. We did not do a really good job of creating outlets for our people at that time. I feel that the creative leadership was missing. And if elected or when elected, that's some of the things that we'll work on. In the midst of a crisis, you still have to create outlets so that energy can be transferred constructively.
Thank you.
Rebuttal.
Go ahead, Lieutenant Governor.
Thank you. My opponent, Mr. Miller, seems to think that I'm misrepresenting the ideas of revenue generated by the office of the Lieutenant Governor and pulling wool over the public's eye. I don't think he's ever read a revenue statement of the revenues that we generate. I was trying to be very specific in answering your question about revenues at the office of the Lieutenant Governor. If we wanted to talk about the overall economy, we can talk about the ways that we've been growing small businesses, the grants to small businesses. We can talk about growing the charter yacht industry, the marine industry, the kinds of meetings that we have had with our colleagues in the British Virgin Islands about the borders between us and how we have more harmonious use of these waters that can benefit both territories. I could talk about the internet technologies that we're trying to expand, the support of entrepreneurship with our young people, such as the Millennial Council, etc. Those are many ways to generate revenues within the industry, for the territory, but I thought the question was specifically about the Office of Lieutenant Governor, and that was my response directed to it.
Candidate Miller, the cost of home ownership insurance continues to be a primary source of driving up the cost of living in the VI. What solution would you offer to this problem? And you have 90 seconds.
Again, thanks for the question. Again, it all boils down to creating new revenues into the coffers of the Virgin Islands to help assist our people to alleviate the strains and struggles of paying for property tax, high insurance policies, and the like. I am saying to you, I never told the Lieutenant Governor that he is not trying to help the people, but I'm saying you're not doing enough. You must be more creative. We must be more creative and generate new revenues into the coffers. You cannot tell me that you've been doing all of this and we still don't have a hospital. That we don't have a morgue in our hospital in St. Croix. Our roofing program is totally disorganized. The schools in the Virgin Islands are deplorable. Our healthcare system again is deplorable. If you were generating revenues to help the people, all these issues would have been addressed. I'm saying to you, and I'm not knocking you in any way, I'm saying we need to be more creative and we need to introduce or induce more revenue generating measures into the Virgin Islands, into the coffers of the Virgin Islands, so we could help our people who are struggling here.
Senator Sarauw, would you like me to read the question again?
Yes, go ahead.
The cost of home ownership insurance continues to be a primary cost to drive up the cost of living in the VI. What solution would you offer to this problem? And you have 90 seconds.
Thank you. The roofing program exacerbated the fact that we do have an insurance issue. There are so many right now in their homes that, we have so many blue roofs because they're either underinsured or not insured, and they keep drilling that down. When you look, we had through the Committee of Housing and the Committee of Finance, we had the banks and they came before us, and all expressed the lack of autonomy. They needed greater autonomy to do their job. So many decisions, almost all decisions, were going through Puerto Rico and being made by Puerto Rico. But the answer is really simple. It's a one-shot answer. We have to bring back the private mortgage insurance companies to this territory. If we don't bring back the PMIs, we're going to continue to see a monopoly and the cost of insurance continue to increase. Let them know we're open for business. When we had a 2008 mortgage crisis in the United States, the housing market fell. But in the territory, we went flat. So we need to just negotiate, communicate, and I'm a very forceful person. Well-behaved women really make history, and I promise you, I will get to work on the first day to bring back those private mortgage insurance companies to this territory. That's what we need. Thank you.
Lieutenant Governor Roach.
Well, the accreditation of our insurance, banking and insurance division by the national entity, as I mentioned before, has really done a lot to make us more attractive to the insurance community and banking community as well. In fact, we are entertaining two companies. Right now we're reviewing the credentials of two companies that want to do business here in that regard. We're also reviewing and almost at the acceptance stage of a company that wants to provide an individual health product. You know that we've had a challenge with that because we were not covered under Obamacare, and without the mandate, there was difficulty in attracting insurance companies to the territory. I believe that we should make more home ownership opportunities available to young people in particular. The governor and I have talked about the down payment program where we can assist first-time home buyers with the down payment. I think we should also look at people who have a difficulty, particularly or retirees who are living on fixed incomes, with programs that might help in addressing insurance and other costs, and not just the persons who are home buying. I think it is a challenge for the territory. The St. John was referenced. St. John is a booming economy, yet at the same time, we have issues with access to land regarding the national park, and we have to work through those as well.
Thank you. We remind the viewers that while all 4 candidates for Lieutenant Governor position were invited, one did not respond to our invitation. We are nonetheless happy to have 3 of them here with us today.
Please?
Rebuttal?
Yes.
Go ahead.
In reference to some of them.
In
Oh, you have to
reference, in
okay.
reference
Yeah,
to
the
something
references first.
specific that was said?
I stand down.
Okay. All right, our next question, we will start with Senator Sarauw. What are the most important initiatives that will garner your immediate attention as Lieutenant Governor? Explain why you have selected those initiatives. You have 90 seconds.
The first one we just spoke about would be insurance, achieving home ownership. In the Senate, we moved the First Time Home Buyers Act because the cost of down payment, we realized so many people could not make that down payment, that 20 to 40% down payment, which is roughly between 20,000 to 80,000. So we funded $4 million from the Internal Revenue Matching Fund over to VIHFA as the it would act as a secondary lender for the down payment at a very, very low interest rate. So that's what we've done in the Senate so far. But to really achieve home ownership, we have to get our banks to offer more products. Puerto Rico has to offer the same products. The Puerto Rican banks that they offer there, they have to offer to the people of this territory. We can't talk about what will be done. Right now, as we sit here today, our banks are not offering construction loans. They came before us, they said it will be done, but the reality is that it's not being done. So as Lieutenant Governor, we got to get to the table and say, listen, we invest so much in your banks. Half of the government's revenues sit in these banks. And if we can't leverage the money that you make off of us, we will begin to bank elsewhere. So that's the main focus. That's what I intend to do, to push for home ownership in the territory.
Thank you. And Lieutenant Governor Roach, did you need me to reread the question?
No, 3
Okay.
priorities.
What are the most important initiatives that would garner your immediate attention,
Okay.
and why you've selected them? And you have 90 seconds.
A large percentage of our population is uninsured, and I'm speaking to health insurance. And I'm excited about the possibility of this company coming. We are all talking about what will be done if we are able to do them. And so we also are working towards future accomplishments. And I would really like to see that happen, because those of us who are covered by the government of the Virgin Islands often are not sympathetic or understanding of the 30% of the population who are uninsured. So I really would like to put more emphasis on the individual insurance option. I really want us to undertake the street addressing initiative and to complete it. My opponent referenced that when she worked in the office of the Lieutenant Governor, it was something that had begun, and that's several years ago. And so we were able to secure $5 million in funding. We completed the street addressing components of Christiansted, Fredericksted, Cruz Bay, Charlotte Amalia, and now we're working out on the rural areas. It is an important initiative because it is collaborative, and all you have to do is think about the difficulty that we have identifying where people are in emergencies and following natural disasters. And I think that's a very, very critical component. And I would also like to do everything we can with regard to the cost of insurance to promote home ownership and a better quality of life for residents.
Thank you. And Mr. Miller, did you need me to reread the question?
No.
Okay, you have 90 seconds.
Thank you. We again, the first things, of course, healthcare is important to me. The health, without health, you don't have no wealth. Without health, you can't do anything. You can't enjoy the amenities of life. But also, we got to focus on what we have and what we could do with what we have, like agriculture. We need to again incentivize the agricultural industry in the Virgin Islands. Not only the agricultural industry, but the aquacultural industry into fish farms. These are new revenue generating measures, again, that I'm speaking about. Without bringing new coffers into the Virgin Islands, it's going to be the same old, everyday nonsense that is going on here in the Virgin Islands. We need new monies. We need to become self-reliant. We need to take care of our own issues and stop asking the federal government to help us. The way we do this is to create new revenue generating measures that our previous and current administration has failed to address. We keep using taxes as a means to pay off our bills and our debts, and we keep floating bonds because we're bankrupt for ideas. This has to stop.
Given that the Lieutenant Governor is but a heartbeat away from being the governor, let's talk about your views and/or solutions to other issues of concern to the territory. And we'll do this as time permits, based on the next questions. Again, will be based on the amount of time we have. But this goes to not just being the Lieutenant Governor, but also how do you contribute to the team as Governor, Lieutenant Governor? John?
Lieutenant Governor Roach, what advice would you give the governor on crime?
I think the advice I would
And
give...
you have,
Oh, I'm
you have
sorry.
60 seconds.
Okay. I think crime is a community issue, and I think we need to involve our community more in a discussion about crime. I put a lot on personal responsibility, and I say it repeatedly that when you break the law, the police officers, whenever we have conversations, they're always having these confrontations with the public, like, why are you bothering me about being on the cell phone or running a red light or whatever, go catch the real criminals. And I think the conversation about personal responsibility has to do with every instance of law breaking contributes towards a community that is law breaking. And if we don't take responsibility for our own conduct, we can't expect greater of other people. We do have to have, we have the challenge. The challenge of this era is human capital. The challenge of training people, recruiting people. We see our police classes declining in numbers, and we need to encourage persons towards those careers as well.
Candidate Miller?
So when we talk about crime, the first thing we think about is the local street man on the street. But we have people in our government, in the hierarchy of government, that's misappropriating funds, gigantic funds, like the PFA in the 2017 audit, where we're missing $151 million of our taxpayers' money. Like the Water and Power Authority that has, there's a missing of $2 to $4 million and hasn't been addressed. These issues hasn't been addressed. So we need to institute back into the public the white collar crime division, because all we think about is the street man who is getting arrested. What about people in our hierarchy of government that's stealing the taxpayers' money and it's not being addressed? And the Attorney General of the Virgin Islands is not doing anything about it. So we need to introduce, I would suggest that we reintroduce the white collar crime division and stop focusing on just only, rightfully so. If you break the law, it definitely must be arrested.
Senator Sarauw.
Thank you. The White Collar Unit has actually been funded by the Senate through the Attorney General's office. But what we need to, two things in the essence of time, the deployment of officers. We have to get a GPS system working so we can be able to deploy officers based on their location and they can get to a crime timely. We have to look at how we schedule officers. We have so many officers that are scheduled at random times, and we need to look at how we schedule them in the crime-riddled neighborhoods as well. But lastly, the outlets. We got to provide more outlets for our more outlets and more rehab programs within our schools, more academic and intervention programs. Within our communities, every single community center must be open. Our rec centers must be open. We have to provide those outlets for our young people to just be able, we have a loitering law that I do not agree with, but we have to create spaces, safe spaces for young people to hang out and to enjoy themselves so that we can actually curb crime. Thank you.
Lieutenant Governor Roach, you have 60 seconds. What advice would you give the governor on health care?
I really strongly supported the medical school at the university because the studies show that if you grow personnel in your location, you have a greater chance that they will stay. And I think we have kind of strayed a little bit away from it, even though we've made such a tremendous investment in facilities. The classroom administration building on St. Thomas is completed. The simulation center on St. Croix is completed. Again, I repeat, the challenge is going to be human capital. Even when we finish our hospitals, we still will have the challenge of recruiting personnel. There are times when we've had one cardiologist, no cardiologist in the territory, no neonatal persons in the territory as well. So I really believe that we should look at that medical school. I think when we have completed the hospitals and when we have the cardiac unit brought back on and the cancer center, we could have a dynamic health system.
Candidate Miller,
Can you repeat the question again, please?
the question is, what advice would you give to the governor on health care?
Well, I've been studying a program that France, country of France has, which is one of the top healthcare programs in the world. And I would advise the governor to look at a system like France's system where everyone is covered from the top to the bottom as far as insurance is concerned. And also, we again, I agree with the Lieutenant Governor. We need a medical school. We need to prep our children to become doctors and scientists and biologists and nurses. We need more nursing programs. We need more programs to help retrofit the Virgin Islands for when we do, if we ever get to it, and we will if you elect the Fred Miller team to a new hospital. So thank you for the question.
Senator Sarauw.
Earlier I said the focus on healthcare, bring back the J1 visa program. We lost that over the years, the loan repayment program to get more physicians to the territory, finalizing a nursing contract. We have to update the cancer registry. We have to get our cancer center open immediately. Programs to produce more CNAs and LPNs, those are needed in the nursing home to flip our body. To flip a bedridden person, you need at least 2 or 3 LPNs or CNAs. So we definitely need that. We need to move rapidly on getting our nursing homes certified. We need to improve our assisted living facilities. And lastly, immediately lobby in Washington on our MAP reimbursements. They're about to roll back. MAP is a problem. An immediate lobbying of getting our MAP reimbursements to what they are now. It was a tremendous help to us in the territory. Thank you.
Thank you. We finally have an interim fix for GERS, or as some people say, the Government Employees Retirement System, so that insolvency is not an immediate threat. What key changes do you think should be put in place to avoid risks of a return to insolvency? You'll have 60 seconds, and we'll start with Mr. Miller.
Well, of course, I don't know how insolvent the GRS is. That's what they said. I haven't seen it yet. The thing about it is we have a company by the name of WICO in the Virgin Islands that's supposed to be a semi-autonomous entity in the Virgin Islands. But the employees don't pay into the GRS system. And I find that to be very, very alarming to me. And it's interesting that the Senate have, on many occasions, and there are court cases that shows that the WICO was supposed to be actually paying into the system. But again, it goes back to revenue generating measures and being creative so that the GRS, we don't have to float bonds and put our children's children for the next 60 years into debt. And this is the problem that we have here in the Virgin Islands. We lack creativity as it relates to revenue generating measures. Thank you.
Senator Sarauw?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. We finally have an interim fix for the Government Employees Retirement System so that insolvency is not an immediate threat. What key changes do you think should be put in place to avoid risks of a return to insolvency? You have 60 seconds.
I wouldn't call it interim fix. We're actually on the path to solvency as we've the Senate, we've worked diligently through the GRS subcommittee on the final piece of legislation that moves that money from the Internal Revenue Matching Fund. We've pledged all of that over to the system. The important thing here is, though, is that we calculated the solvency plan on a rate of 13.25 for rum, and it actually went back to 10.50. So there is a shortfall. Whether or not we want to admit it, there will be a shortfall. We definitely have to lobby Congress to increase our rum, what we produce. It has to go back to 13.25 or more. It's been the same for the last probably 20, 30 years. And Tier 1 is a problem. But in the Senate, we've pushed to reverse the unfunded mandates. But Tier 1 is the part of the system that we're really trying to move to solvency. Tier 2 pays for itself. Thank you.
Thank you. And Lieutenant Governor Roach.
I would agree that it's not an interim fix, thanks to the Brian Roach administration. And when we discuss the retirement system, if you notice, the government workforce has been declining in numbers. And there was a conversation about employees who work in the private sector who do not have retirement plans and whether a government employee's retirement system might be able to accommodate some privately employed employees. I believe that we should continue to look at that. I believe we have to review and make sure that we also look at the investment practices and to make sure that GRS investments are productive and useful to the territory and contribute to the solvency of the system. And I do believe that they should bring back the employee loan program, because it was never an issue that they had any problems with generating revenue from that employee loan program. In fact, they were charging the employees a higher rate of interest than some of the banks and making money of their money.
Thank you.
Senator Sarauw, your question. What advice would you give the governor for maintaining and enhancing our standing as a highly designated port in tourism?
Can you repeat the question for me?
What advice would you give to the governor for maintaining and enhancing our standing as a highly desired tourism port as our destination? You have 60 seconds.
One, we have to finish the Schooner Bay. That project we have to, because St. Croix is slated in Christiansted for the smaller ships. We have to revitalize Frederiksted so that we can incentivize ships to want to come to Frederiksted and have things to do down in Frederiksted. We have to complete the dredging of the harbor as well so that we can get those ships into Charlotte Amalia's harbor. And the last thing that I would propose to the governor is finally merging the port and Waiko. When we go to sea trade, it's quite embarrassing to see the same 32 square mile island fighting for the same product. We definitely have to merge the port and Waiko, and it was a promise that was made 4 years ago. I haven't seen it done. We have legislation right now in the Senate to get it done, but we can't get any buy-in because the PFA and the Port Authority has indicated to my office that they're in the works of getting it done. But the port and Waiko has to be merged.
Lieutenant Governor Roach.
I think in general, the marketing of the Virgin Islands is an important one. And the marketing of each island for its specific characteristics is also critical. Regional travel is something that we don't pay as much attention to as we should, and inter-island travel, we don't. I have had instances where family members visit me and we can go to Tortola, we can go to Puerto Rico, and we can enjoy Caribbean islands around us for less than it is to travel from St. Thomas to St. Croix. I think that's a critical thing that we need to address. I do agree with the Senator about the merger of the Port Authority and Waiko-controlled ports, because we shouldn't be competing against one another. And we have beautiful facilities. The attraction of smaller cruise ships into the Gallows Bay area for St. Croix it's an important one as well.
Senator Miller.
Okay, thank you. So I agree with the merging of Waiko and the Port Authority. What I'm saying is we need to also create, again, new revenue generating measures so that the tourist industry, when they come here, they have something to see. We do not, right now as it stands, most of the people that come in on the tourist ships in the Virgin Islands, they don't come off the ship. What do they have to them for them to see? Nothing. So we need to start creating new water parks, new fish farming industries, so that people could see the type of work that we're doing. Farming, a lot of folks that travel around the world, they don't want to see the same thing that they see home. We need to create new things in the Virgin Islands, new revenue generating measures that are going to attract the tourist industry.
Thank you. What are your thoughts on self-governance and political status for the U.S. Virgin Islands? You'll have 60 seconds, and we will start with Lieutenant Governor Roach.
The efforts to draft a constitution for the Virgin Islands have been significant. We've had this debate about whether we should have status addressed first or whether we should have a constitution addressed first. I think it is a really critical element for the community, for the territory in terms of its political advancement. But unfortunately, the structures that also provide for that kinds of conversation do not contribute a whole lot to it. You use the United Nations as an example. They said that we are a non-self-governing territory. They declared a decade of decolonization. That decade has stretched into 40 years or maybe 50 years, and maybe one of those non-self-governing territories has been removed. I believe we should reinvigorate our status commission. The discussion in the legislature about a constitutional convention, I think, is a good one because it gets us on that topic once more.
Thank you. Candidate Miller, did you need me to reread the question?
No.
Okay, you have 60 seconds.
Thank you. So here's my stance. We have a constitution already. We wrote it 5 times. Why do we need to write it again? If we have to adopt anything, let's amend what we have already created. Okay? Let's amend what we have already created. I am not in favor of a 6th constitutional convention. We already cash crop with monies. We don't need to be putting monies towards that. Let's create our own. Let's use what we have again. We don't need to adopt the Organic Act. A constitution is for the people, by the people. The Organic Act was not written by us. Okay, so we need to actually adapt what we have. We wrote it 5 times. We now have a 5th constitution. We wrote it 5 times. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. All we do is if we're going to adapt and amend the Organic Act, why not adapt and amend what we have already? Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Sarauw?
Thank you. We have to give ourselves some grace. We got the right to become self-governing in 1970 with Parliament President Gardner as the first civilian governor of the territory, and before that we had naval governors, and then Melvin Evans was our first elected governor. So I don't agree that we don't need a convention. I'm the author of the bill that would seek to have a 6th constitutional convention. Constitutions have to be documents of, by, and for the people. And in order to gain some understanding around status and types of statuses, whether you're a freely incorporated state, unincorporated, freely associated state, what's not, we definitely have to push that as well in our education system. On the topic of status, we can't have a constitution without status, but create a provision within the constitution that outlines the method in which we are to achieve some level of status. But I would advise that we do push for a 6th constitutional convention. We need to achieve political maturity.
Thank you. And this will be our last question. In summary, what do you bring to the team that helps make yours the best team to lead the territory for the next 4 years? You'll have 60 seconds. We will start with Mr. Miller.
Thank you. What I bring to my team is innovative measures, new revenue generating measures. I can't repeat it often enough. We lack this in our current government right now. And I'm saying to you, I bring leadership. I have leadership skill. I've led many teams to restore the Virgin Islands after it was damaged by Irma and Maria. And I'm saying to you, the fact that we're cash crop and dependent on the United States to help us financially on every time a disaster comes is unbearable. We need to stop this. We need to create our own money, create our own new revenue generating measures, get whatever money that's owed to us from America and use that to rebuild the Virgin Islands. Thank you.
Senator Sarauw, please.
Thank you. I was in an election selection. Senator Viale and I work very closely in the Senate. The people actually put us together. They're the ones that picked the team. So we have a close working relationship. We talk on a daily basis. We're friends. We share the same work ethic. We share the same vision. But I'm not afraid to tell Senator Viale when I think he's wrong. I'm not a yes person. I'm transparent. I'm open. I'm well researched. I'm well read. I actually bring a burst of youth to the team. I'm a woman. I understand the perspectives of the marginalized as well. I come with a Caribbean perspective, as my grandfather is the longest serving Speaker of the House from St. Kitts. So we do have a good chemistry between the both of us, and I appreciate the fact that he leans on my advice. So I definitely know that I bring a lot to the table, and I support my running mate wholeheartedly.
Thank you. And Lieutenant Governor Roach.
Thank you. I believe that I bring a wealth of experience to the position, a broad scope. The references I made to the United Nations, I was invited 3 times to speak to the United Nations about the self-government for the territory. With regard to government, I've worked in government sector, I've worked in all, the judicial branch, the executive branch, I'm 3-term senator in the legislature, intimately familiar with our codes and our laws, etc. I have taught at the university. I have a lot of engagement with young people with regard to women's issues, etc. My chief of staff, my CFO, my division of banking director are all female. And I really want to see the people of the Virgin Islands. This is my home as a naturalized citizen. I came to the territory at the age of 8. And I really want to see opportunity given to people the way that I have received opportunity here.
Thank you.
And now we will go to your closing statements. Lieutenant Governor Roach, you'll start us off.
I want to first thank the League of Women Voters for inviting us to this forum. I want to thank my opponents, for lack of a better word. I wanted to say colleagues for appearing as well and engaging in this a meaningful discussion. The question of who you select for Lieutenant Governor is a critical one. Very often we're focused on the governor. The offices that are under this division are very important, and they really require a person who has had some managerial responsibility. We have over 120 employees. There are like 8 office locations on 3 islands, looking to you for guidance and for leadership. And I believe my work in both the private and public sectors and the types of positions that I have held really equip me in a way that I can contribute to meaningful government for the territory and effective leadership going forward.
Candidate Miller.
Good. Thank you. All the experience that you have,
You have 1 minute.
all the experience that you have don't mean anything if you can't help the people of the Virgin Islands. And we have a serious problem here in the Virgin Islands, especially St. Croix. We don't have a hospital. With all the experience that you have, if you don't have the intestinal fortitude to get the issues that are plaguing the people of the Virgin Islands done and addressed, all the experience you have is just, like you said, pump faking. We want people who are going to shoot the ball. Thank you.
Senator Sarauw, 1 minute.
Well, first of all, I want to thank the League of Women Voters and WTJX for having us here today, and to the candidates here as well for engaging in a robust discussion. I've worked as a teacher, a professor, I've coached. I've invested in this community, a culture bearer. In the Senate, I've shown grit, I've shown accountability and transparency. And I've been as authentic as I could be in the entire time I've served. Senator Viale is a man of integrity as well. You need a team that will understand the issues of this government. We are prepared. We are ready to move. I understand the inner workings of the Office of Lieutenant Governor, having worked there as well, and I believe that I am the best person for the job. It's time that the territory does have a woman in higher office. Young, I am ready, I am prepared, I am filled with purpose, ready for forward movement, number 4 on the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates, timers, and viewers. And thank you, WTJX-TV and staff, for today's program that brought candidates for the position of Lieutenant Governor of the U.S. Virgin Islands to the attention of the voting public. We remind the viewers that while all 4 candidates for the Lieutenant Governor position were invited, 1 did not respond to our invitation. We were nonetheless happy to have 3 here with us today. The League of Women Voters hopes this program has helped you, the voter, in understanding the candidates, and in so doing, inform your vote in November.
The League reminds you that your vote determines the future of the Virgin Islands. Every vote does count. During the election, often seen, individual barely makes the cut, but a few people did not. Or one who barely lost and wishes he only had a few more persons had voted. Let your voice be heard by your vote. It's your right, take it.
Thank you for watching. I am Francine Lang for the League of Women Voters of the Virgin Islands, with co-moderator Mr. John Abramson saying, vote early or vote by mail or vote on November 8th. Just be sure to vote. Thank you.